Have you heard about Anchor? Well, it's one of the easiest ways to create a podcast. Not only is it 100% free, but it has a variety of creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or a computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast to other sites such as Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many others for you. And Anchor even allows you to make money from your podcast without a required minimum listenership. So whether you've been in the podcasting game for a long time or you're completely new to it, Anchor is so user-friendly that it's basically your one-stop shop for making a podcast. So what are you waiting for? Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
You're listening to First Fossil. Because sometimes you simply need someone to help you take that first fossil. Hello and welcome to First Fossil, a show where we learn together how to take that first fossil toward becoming the best versions of ourselves. My name is Candace Olushala, and today's special guest is someone that I reconnected with on Instagram and was someone that I actually went to undergrad with, and our first encounter was actually camp when we were like 16, 17 years old. So it's been cool to see her now as a new podcaster. She is a nurse by trade. She has her master's in health informatics. She just started a small print shop, so that's really cool. And her podcast is Everyday Colloquies. So without further ado, please welcome Chantel Howard. Hey girl, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so glad we could collab like this. Like, so nice to run into other podcasters who are trying to figure this whole record, edit, find time to put it all together, post it, repeat life. So it's refreshing to get to actually do a podcast with another podcaster.
Yes, this is a first for me, so I'm very excited about it.
Oh, good. So how have you been with, 2020, quarantine, COVID life? How has that affected you?
2020 has been very bizarre.
Bizarre.
It just all of it. Very
Yes.
bizarre.
Yes.
2019, December, everyone makes their New Year's resolution. Oh my goodness, this is going to be a great year. I'm going to do this, that, and the other. And then, it was just one thing after another.
Mm-hmm.
But even in the midst of that, I do still think there's been a lot of good that's come about. It's given, I think, a lot of us time to reflect, a lot of time to spend with our families and start podcasts.
Right. Hey, yes. We would not be here if it wasn't for the pandemic. So thank you, pandemic, but not because people are sick, but
Exactly.
take what you get. I don't know. It's a struggle. But yeah, I feel the exact same way. That whole man, we're jumping into 2020, the year of perfect vision. We're gonna make it, roaring 20s all over again. And boy, is it roaring, guys. It is. We didn't ask for the disease side of the 1920s to be returned to the 2020s, but here we are, diseased up, living it up exactly as we all hoped for. So. Ta-da,
Yes,
joke's on us. The struggle.
A lot of people are still living it up.
They are. They are. Facts.
Whether they should be or not is
It's
a whole different conversation.
That's a whole podcast
but...
right there. That's a whole episode right there.
Yes,
should you be living it up right now? Mercy. I can't even. Well, I'm glad you're doing great and that you've started this podcast and, you've gotten to really kind of, I guess, grow a little bit in 2020. But tell us a little bit more about yourself. Tell everyone a little bit more of who Chantel is and what she does.
Okay, so I will try to make this as interesting as possible. not your regular mundane. My name is Chantel Howard. Okay, so let's see. My astrological sign is Scorpio. And yes, I am mysterious, I am private, I'm ambitious, loyal, and all those other amazing traits that represents a Scorpio. My family is of Caribbean descent. My mother is Guyanese and my father is Trinidadian.
Stop,
Yes,
my
we
mom is
have.
Grenadian. Oh my
Really?
word. Watch us be neighbor cousins. I can't
Uh
even.
oh.
That's so
Great
cool.
food.
Yes.
No,
Yes,
I
shout
can't
out to the
cook it.
Caribbean. Rough. We're struggling, but we love our culture. So,
Yes, yes.
yes.
So I recently bought a Harley Davidson motorcycle. I am currently learning how to ride. Scary, a little scary, but I'm super excited about it.
Yes.
Let's see what else. My love language is gift giving and words of affirmation. Hint, hint. My personality type, I don't remember the lettering, but I am 99.999% positive that it was that rare genius type. So there's that.
Okay.
And
Like an INFJ?
I really don't remember
Maybe.
the
That's the
letters, but that
rarest
might
one.
be.
I'm an INFJ.
You know, the funny thing
So,
is, that's probably what it is because I thought that it was so rare. And I remember I had another Instagram account before the one that I currently have. And I remember putting that on my bio. And I had so many people, okay, maybe like 5 out of my 50 followers, message me. And they were like, oh my goodness, no way, that's me too. And I'm like, I thought this was rare.
that is,
What?
yep, that was me. I'm like, how do I have so many INFJ friends when this is not supposed to be that popular? What is happening?
Exactly. Hmm.
Hmm.
So I guess that is me in a nutshell. And I love to travel. I love to travel. So, like everyone else, I am suffering right now and going a little stir crazy, but
Yeah.
this too shall pass, right?
Yes, yes, Lord, put me on a plane. I miss traveling as well, so I empathize with you in that. So, but that's cool. I mean, that wasn't mundane. That was cool information about you, girl. That was awesome. I love that. Tell tell us about what a significant first Basso experience was for you that you feel like is important, is that you learned an important lesson from.
Starting my podcast was a huge first step for me.
Mm,
I know this might be hard to believe for some because it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I thoroughly enjoy oratory endeavors. It's
mm,
something that I've done since about middle school. If I can prepare, ahead of time, I'm okay.
right?
So there was a lot of preparation that went into it, which honestly was the easiest part of it for me. And I think that was the easiest part because while I was preparing, it didn't require me to actually put myself out there yet.
Uh, yeah.
Mhm. And although it's something I enjoy, it still brought me a lot of anxiety. Um, it wasn't a walk in the park for me. It wasn't without its own challenges along the way. And I'm sure you could probably relate to some of um, those issues as well.
Yes. Yes. Wow. So what did you do, or well, let me go back a little bit. When was it that you just decided, "Hey, I want to do a podcast?" Like, was that something you'd been thinking about before COVID, or was COVID kind of the nudge to have you move in that direction?
So, my overall journey, I think, with this has been over the course of years. But last year, I think I started to really get serious about it. I
Mm,
began doing a lot of groundwork, a lot of research. But even at that point, I didn't know that a podcast is what I wanted to focus on. I
mm,
know I wanted to do something oratory. And so I finally narrowed it down to, oh, okay, I'll either do a YouTube channel or I'll do a podcast, but ended up deciding on the podcast because number one, I don't always have to look presentable. Number two, I don't always have to look presentable. And number three, I don't always have to look presentable. I was like, okay, that's a
Yes,
win. I'm
that's the
sold.
one. Yes, yes. I love
But,
that.
it's not that I'm really camera shy per se, but I think starting a YouTube channel, it just required a little more groundwork that I wanted to do.
Right,
So,
right. Yes. And I resonate with most of that because I guess like you had it was in the back of your head to do something to present yourself publicly. I had that in the back of my head for like way down the future. Like I mean, I'm talking late 30s. Like we keep going, and the pandemic hit. And I was a guest on someone's podcast and was like, oh, "This is my calling." Like it, just, it like hit me out of nowhere. I was like, "I could do this forever." So I just jumped on and like found a mic somewhere and was like, "Okay, now how do I make this work?" But I think that's really cool. And so, do you have goals for your podcast, or like did you lay out a list of goals before you started recording? Are you building goals as you go? Like how are you thinking of the future of this?
right now it is trial and error.
Same.
I would love, and I think everyone feels this way when they start something, you want it to be successful. And so I absolutely would love to build up my listeners and, I want it to grow. I Right now I don't do any sort of advertising on there or anything like that. And my episodes are pretty short as well. Um, but I don't know. We'll just see how it goes. I'm just kind of going with the flow. I am enjoying it, and so I don't want it to turn into work, you know?
Right.
So we'll just see how it goes. I'm going with the flow, and I'm just gonna take it one step at a time.
I love that. I think that's fair. I mean, hey, we're already in a pandemic where we have to take every day a step at a time. We don't even know what tomorrow's going to look like. So, I think that's pretty wise and reasonable to want to take it a step at a time, especially since I'm in that boat with you. It's just like I'm trying to figure out the editing side. I'm trying to figure out the recording side. I'm trying to figure out how to find people to listen to the podcast, trying to figure out how to, showcase myself better and more consistently so I get a following, like all of those things, which I don't know about you, but when I jumped into the podcasting thing, I didn't fully think about the upkeep part. I just kind of was like, I want to record. And then I was like, wait, I have to do this all the time and do it consistently so I have a consistent base. And so I feel like that's something I'm doing trial and error too on, like, what is my groove? What is the balance between recording, editing, and posting? And do I do it in chunks, like record a bunch and then post a bunch and then record a bunch? Or do I record and then post that episode and then record and put, like, trying to find my flow still. And I don't know how long it's going to take before I figure out my flow. And then trying to flow on a budget is a whole other thing. You can't flow too far, guys, on a budget. Like, and that's like trying to surf on a dinner plate. Like that's kind of how I feel right now. I'm just trying to be literally, like, I'm just trying to make it. Like, I got an Amazon package. I pulled off a piece and now I'm trying to hold on to dear life and try not to sink in the ocean. Like, that is the COVID podcaster's budget that we're talking about and trying to be successful.
I love it.
This. And people are like, oh, wow, it's so great. And it's like, I'm literally pushing out like a $5 thing every week and hoping people like it enough to maybe sponsor me. So, like, I mean, the struggle's real in these streets. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. So, I mean, I think that's really fun and ambitious to, both of us, especially like we are women of color, we are women of Caribbean descent, and it's really, I don't know, it's really invigorating at this time to really put yourself out there, and showcase your skills in hopes that people actually are drawn to and connect to those skills that you have. And what for you has been the, I don't know, scariest or most nerve-wracking part of keeping up with the podcast?
I guess it would have to be, well, editing is very hard.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not that it's so much hard, but it's very time consuming.
Yes.
And so, trying to balance my life and all the other things that I have going on, sometimes it takes up, such a large chunk of my time. I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to figure out how to cut back on this somehow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I want to, have engaging conversations with followers and, respond in a timely manner. Um, and so just, I think getting that content out there and following up, staying engaged with followers, and just trying to, I guess, make it as appealing as possible to people.
Mm-hmm.
Eh, it's almost like a hit or a miss, because my podcast, Everyday Colloquies, anything goes, everything
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah.
So the conversations can be about literally anything.
Yeah.
And so I think, I guess maybe finding those topics that are interesting and intriguing to other people,
Yeah. Yeah.
finding those things that people really enjoy listening to or about
Mm-hmm.
is that's been a bit of a challenge. Um, I guess maybe I could do a little poll or something online that might be helpful.
Yeah.
Um, but, like I know what I like. I know what
Right.
I like to talk about or what I
Right.
find interesting.
Right.
But, for someone else, they might be like, sleep paralysis, you know? I'm like, ooh, sleep paralysis.
Like,
It was like,
next topic.
exactly, exactly.
I feel you on that. Like, I think, yeah, definitely the editing part and trying to live your everyday life and finding that, making sure you carve out the appropriate time to edit and still get everything else you need in life done, is overwhelming. Especially when you don't really have anyone to help you. Like, you're literally doing it solo. And
Yes.
then you have your friends who are like, good job. And you're like, help me for free, please.
Just have
I'll
to
pay
throw
you
that in
later.
there for free.
like, I'll pay you later. Just
No
come help
budget.
me. I don't have anything. Like, come support me in real life. Like, by helping me, please. But yeah, like, I think it's so nice to hear another podcaster who's in the season of, starting the podcast talk about that, because I think, for me, when I tried to put the podcast together to start, I wanted to listen. Well, okay, maybe I'm just going to say this. I have seen a bunch of podcasters post their master classes. I don't know if you keep getting these notifications every time you open up your computer, but I kept seeing those at the beginning, right? And I'm like, oh, that is so kind. These podcasters that want to like help people who are starting their podcast learn stuff. And then they would give you like this bare minimum. And then they would say, now, if you want to know like the rest of what I do,
Give me
it
some
costs
money.
$400 somebody. And I was like, I'm sorry. Did y'all forget that we're in the middle of a pandemic and most people are on unemployment? Did you miss that part of the news? Because I don't know where 400 somebody dollars is going to come from to watch a little masterclass. As sweet as I'm sure you are, and as knowledgeable as I'm sure you are, my pocket just can't do that. So I went to all the free ones for a bit, collected what I could, and then I was like, well, we're just going to have to go off the freebie information and make this work. Because I don't know what to do. Yeah, I'm like, just turn on the mic and go and see what happens. And I think the coolest part, though, of that is that I really feel like I'm finding my personal groove. So that way when I do get to this place where I have a system, I have a following, I've done this, I can actually honestly tell people, like, no, I literally had to figure this out, and I had to ask questions. I talked to other podcasters, I talked to other influencers, reached out to influencers, and just hope that they would read my message to just give me any little piece of advice for me to get to where I hope to be in the future. But the beginning stages, man, it's
rough.
It's rough. Like you want, you're in your head, you're like, oh, by next week I hope I have X number of followers and stuff. You're like, no, you have the same followers, the same ones that just love you because they know you, and you try, but you just hope that the consistency. I actually heard this in a webinar was this yesterday? My days have just blurred together. I don't know what day is what. I think it was yesterday that I accidentally jumped into a webinar that I didn't realize was happening. I got a text for it, and I clicked the link, and I don't know if you know of Trent Shelton. He's an ex-NFL player, and he was talking about how, like, don't get bogged down with the, oh, I'm not getting traction yet. You're in your beginning stages, you're putting out stuff, you're trying to showcase yourself, and you're not getting that momentum you desire. He said, but it's not the early stages of quickly getting this momentum, but it's the consistency and the building of your craft that gets you there eventually. And so not to give up. Don't be afraid to reach out to people and ask questions. Look for people who are successful in what you're trying to do and ask them for advice. And really put yourself out there as best as you can. Try to find people who would be willing to help you in your early and broke stages of life, and see if you can build a team if you can. If not, put on your plate what you can and just cultivate that little baby that you've created in your little business or your little, venture, and watch it eventually grow.
That's great advice.
And I was like, I kind of needed that because, it's...
Absolutely. I was extremely anxious about it in the very beginning, and I still have those moments of anxiety. I think most people can relate to those feelings because, those feelings of uncertainty and anxiety when you're creating something and you put it out there for the world. You don't know how people are going to react to it. You don't know what they're going to say, what they really think about it. And, it can be a little bit scary, especially when you're really, pouring, so much effort and time into something. And I think it really places you in a very vulnerable position. And I know we can't grow in comfort, but, discomfort isn't always an appealing alternative option either. But, and those are great words of encouragement, I think, because I think oftentimes we give up too soon, and consistency is definitely key to, a lot of what we do. So,
yeah. So, for you, from your experience so far, you're technically still in the middle of your first paso. You barely put your toes down, right? So we're both in that stage. So what for you, out of everything that you have done so far and have figured out, would be your best advice to someone who's just started out, whether it's their own podcast or it could be something completely different, but it's a new venture for them, and they have all these hopes and dreams, and they're not happening at the rate or in the capacity in which they thought.
Let me say this. The outcome of this was far beyond what I would have hoped for.
Mm.
I've received a lot of positive feedback. I am, really honored and grateful and still in a state of shock that I am actually doing this.
Yes.
Every time I put out another episode, I'm like, wow, I just did that. Like, I totally
Yes.
did that. There
Yes.
is always more downloads and listeners than I anticipate. They
Yep.
say the key to true happiness is low expectations.
Mm.
So I'm never disappointed.
Yes. Same.
But really, I really have a small group of friends and, like my family members, and the number of listeners and downloads exceed that every time. I
Mm.
have no idea who is listening, and it fluctuates sometimes, but I don't know who's listening. I don't know where you are, but thank you.
Yes.
But I think the best advice I've learned is to get out of my own way and stop preventing myself from being great. I think
Wow.
we all have so much potential, so much talent, and so much to offer the world.
Yeah.
And, you know, we we'd be able to do that if we just get the heck out of our way and
Mm.
allow ourselves to grow and be great. Our minds, our thoughts, the words that we speak to ourselves are so powerful.
Yes.
And, you've got to choose every single day to speak life.
Mm-hmm.
Allow yourself to make those mistakes, to learn from them, pick yourself back up, keep going. If there's a
Yep.
dream that you want to pursue, get out there and go for it. I mean, it's 2020. What have you got to lose?
So true. So true.
Never, ever, ever give up on your dreams. You've got it in you. Get out there and take your first paso.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. And to even piggyback off of that, as hard as this sounds, because I have to remind myself the same thing, don't expect yourself to be perfect from jump. Enjoy the process of flopping on your face over and over and over again until you can walk in your craft. It's literally like being a baby and realizing you have legs. You don't quite know what they do yet, and you're trying to figure that out. And you see other people walking, they're using their legs. So now you have this process of observing, listening, you know, communicating and executing until you realize, oh my word, I'm walking. Wow,
Exactly.
it took a minute, but we're walking. And so enjoy that process of learning. I think that's such a organic and beautiful experience when you think about where you've come from to where you are. Even if you feel like you're not walking yet, but you're like, man, I got this like arm pull on my belly kind of move that I got that I didn't have before. Like, this is great. Like, this is the closest thing to crawling I have. Like, this is awesome. Accept that, enjoy that, because eventually you will be able to actively crawl and you will actively walk, and then you will actively be able to move your arms and use them for things, and you'll be an adult in your craft. So enjoy that process and take notes along the way, and when you look back, you'll be able to see all the different steps you took to get to where you go. So I think that's really cool. I am so glad that you got to share your first basso, and it just happened to be about podcasting on a podcast. I think that's something that people they don't hear this side of podcasting. They're just like, man, I love that podcast. But the background of what you have to think about when you decide to start recording, and then what you do once you are recording and keeping it up, and Are you with a team or are you by yourself? Do you have money or do you not? Do you have the time or do you not? Thinking about all of these things at the same time, people don't think about that because they think of the production is out and I listen to it. So thank you for taking the time to share the ins and outs of being a brand new podcaster on the scene and sharing that story with everyone. Is there a way for people to find you specifically on social media and your podcast?
Yes, so on Instagram, just at Everyday Colloquies. And I know that's colloquies is it isn't a very common word. Everyday colloquies is just everyday conversations, FYI. Um, but uh, I have faith in you. You can figure out how to spell it. Everyday colloquies. It is available on all the major podcast platforms. So Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, just today, Amazon,
Oh,
what is it called? It is their music podcast, Amazon Music or something like that.
I didn't know
Um,
this.
yes, so make
I
sure
need to
you
jump
get
on
on
there.
there. Yes, exactly.
Okay, Amazon. Jumping into every arena on the planet. Okay,
Every,
Amazon.
exactly. Every is correct.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'm going to add myself on there. Nice. Okay. So we're on all the platforms. And I'm just going to put this tidbit in, not tidbit, but like just announcement on behalf of both of us. If you would like to sponsor either of us, please let us know. We are accepting sponsors from literally anywhere at this point. So please reach out to us. We would love to collect sponsors that see our craft as being one that will grow into something amazing and they believe in what we're doing. So just throwing that out there for anyone who wants to sponsor us. Poor baby podcasters.
That is
Please, oh
exactly
please,
what
oh
we are.
please. Yes, absolutely. And I don't know if you're on Patreon. Are you on Patreon yet?
No, I am not.
I'm on Patreon. I think it's an easy thing to add. You kind of keep your Patreon followers in the loop. I try to keep them in a day early of when I'm going to post and what it's going to be about. Starting simple before I really grow and figure out tiers and stuff. I have tiers, but I'm still working on that. So I think Patreon's a cool place to kind of get people to go if they want to financially support or donate. That's like a good pool to collect. So I'm collecting Patreons. If you want to be a first pasito, please contact me too. But yeah, any donations to any new podcast that you see out there, I think all of us baby podcasters, if you're listening to another podcast that needs that support and they have a small following right now, please do what you can to financially support because that will help us be able to grow our crafts in a more reasonable manner and get better equipment, have, better tools that we would need to finance to keep up our podcast and hopefully eventually have enough money to build a team that would be reliable and help us offload some of the things that we do in the beginning stages all by ourselves. So if it's in your heart to donate to either of our podcasts or any other baby podcast show that you're listening to, I highly, highly recommend it. And we thank you in advance for being willing to put money into our ventures and believing in what we're doing.
Yes.
So
And just to throw this in there, not just monetarily, but also just, I love when people just
yes,
interact with my post or leave a comment,
yes,
or, even just listening. Thank you.
yes,
I'm putting this out there for people to listen to it.
yes,
Add me on social media. So,
yes,
even those small little things that you can do if you can't give um,
yes.
right now. So,
Just sharing our podcast, sharing
yeah.
them. If there's an episode you really resonate with, share it with a friend, share it with a coworker, a family member, someone next to you in the store, like, but not too close because COVID. But, I'm just, disclaimer, I don't want people coming at me later. She said to get close to people to share her podcast. I am a healthcare provider. We are both healthcare providers. We did not say that. Please don't tell people that. Wear your mask, wash your hands, stay far apart. But please share. And, we encourage you to also, comment on our post, leave reviews on the social media platforms, on the podcasting ones. Yes, the five stars. 5 stars would be great. Be honest with us, because we want to grow, we want to learn. Any advice that you have or just content that you want to listen to, feel free to share it with us so we have things to think about and process. And really just listening is probably the greatest thing you could do, is because that's why we're putting out content for people to listen and hopefully have conversations after they do hear our episodes. So if you can just give it a listen, like our social media pages, follow us on social media, comment on our posts, share our posts with people, and continue to encourage us in DMs and messages. We love that. And I think it'll help us to stay the course and not feel discouraged as well. So we're reaching out to you, humble before all of you, asking for your support in any way that you can. And we really would appreciate that. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. If there are any topics that you want covered in the future, any situations you want discussed, any questions that you have personally, shoot me a DM, shoot me a post on Twitter, Facebook, IG, and tag me. And if there is something that you can relate to our conversation today about, maybe you're starting a venture, or maybe you're thinking about starting a venture and you realize you don't have the money for it, you realize you don't know where to start, you realize you don't have the connections, but you still have this passion, you still want to do it, share your story, share us where you are in that bustle experience, and I'll share those stories on a future episode, because we always can learn from our listeners as well, and people can grow from the different testimonies that people have about their experiences. So I would really appreciate hearing from you guys, and I hope you guys take care. Have a great day. Please continue to stay safe. We're still in a pandemic, so don't go too crazy and wild out, but continue to make connections throughout these times. And Chantel, thank you so much for doing this episode with me. Hopefully we can continue collabing in different ways in the future, but this was awesome, and thank you so much for sharing your story. You take care, and I'll see you soon.
Alrighty, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Bye, girl.
Bye.